And joining me now is Ivana Stradner, Research Fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Good evening to you, ma'am.
Good evening.
I want to start with Friedrich Merz, who says, quote, perhaps for the first time since the outbreak of the full-scale war, reaching a ceasefire appears actually possible. US officials, of course, reporting that we're 90% of the way there. In your mind, are we on the brink of a breakthrough?
I think when it comes to Russia, we have to understand that it's not going to be easy to negotiate and to end this war anytime soon, because Putin is the one who wants to make sure to pause for a moment and to replenish his military and to continue. There are numerous calculations the Russian economy might actually collapse by the end of 2026. So what Putin is doing right now, he's trying just to buy more time and to put more pressure on Zelensky to accept absolutely unacceptable things and to portray Zelensky as an unreliable actor. So that's precisely, I'm very concerned, whoever believes in the West that negotiations are going in the right direction, the war will end anytime soon, I believe it's sorely mistaken.
Well, President Zelensky says the talks with the United States have been constructive but not easy. And of course, the key sticking point, that 10%, if you like, remains the withdrawal of troops from some parts of eastern Ukraine, for example, Donetsk. And we had our Europe correspondent, Alex Kadia, earlier saying that not having that as part of the percentage is like having a house built but no roof. I mean, would you agree with that assessment, that you can't really say you're 90% of the way there when land concessions, territorial concessions are still such a sticking point?
I think we have to zoom out when we understand this. Even if we allow such concessions, Putin is not going to stop there. The reason why Russia is pushing for that is because Moscow knows that Kyiv cannot accept something like that. And they likely portrayed such a deal to the Trump administration, believing if they just give up, the part of territory, that is going to bring Putin closer to the negotiation table. This is an old KGB game, and we should absolutely not fall for that. And that's precisely why I'm very, very concerned, here in Washington, D.C., hearing over and over again that concessions when it comes to territory, that they are going to bring more peace. Because, look, history is an indication. We already know what happened with numerous other agreements that Russia had with Ukraine, and it violated. So I don't understand why people believe that this time around Putin is going to change his behavior. And as a matter of fact, as I said, this is just an old game. You have to understand when you negotiate with the Kremlin that Putin doesn't think like the West. He understands very well that Washington, D.C., they love to talk business, they love to talk deals, and Trump loves to be portrayed as a deal maker. So, but to have a deal maker in the room, you also have to have the other side of negotiation table that is willing to negotiate in good faith. And all you really have to do is just to see exactly the pictures that you are showing right now. Every time when we offer negotiation to Putin, he actually sends us a signal by attacking more Ukraine. So I really don't understand what part of that message the West does not understand.
Well, you mentioned deals. Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner were the two US representatives in Berlin today leading Washington's side. I mean, some argue that they are simply real estate developers in disguise when they're negotiating issues like land concessions. Is that, and you touched on it there, but is that a genuine concern that you've got two guys in charge for the United States who are looking at Donetsk, they're looking at Luhansk as property to be traded?
Culture matters. And when you negotiate, you have to understand how your opponent thinks. It doesn't matter how you think, how you perceive the world. It's important to understand how the opposing party sees. And that's, I think, one of the key problems with Washington, believing that everyone thinks like them, that everyone processes information like them, and they try to apply American way of thinking business deals to negotiations to end the war. But here is a caveat. They do not understand how Putin thinks, but Putin perfectly understands how they think. And that's precisely why Putin loves to send that envoy for economics, who constantly talks about, mutual economic developments, to talk about, let's forget about Ukraine, let's focus on business, knowing that the Trump administration likes to talk in transactional terms. So this is an old KG. They try to implement that in the past, and they're trying to push for something like that in the future. And until, whether here in Washington, D.C., whether in Brussels or any other place where people are negotiating with Russia, until negotiators understand how the Kremlin thinks, we are doomed to fail.
Now, we're running out of time, but we're also hearing reports tonight that America could give security guarantees to Ukraine that are in line with Article 5 of the NATO alliance, this clause that says an attack on one is an attack on all. Do you have any optimism around that kind of a security guarantee? What could that look like?
I think we have to be very careful when it comes to security guarantees, because make no mistake, Putin is going to challenge also that. Look, you're sitting in Poland. We already saw drone incursions in Poland. We already saw numerous sabotage activities there in the Baltic states, elsewhere in Western Europe, where Putin has been trying to show that Article 5 is a paper tiger. I would love to see security guarantees in Ukraine, but those security guarantees should not be those just, put like on a paper and to be perceived as a paper tiger. They really, really have to bite, and to make sure that it's not only words, but when, not if, when Putin crosses the red line, that NATO will be willing and ready to respond. And I'm not sure about that.
Well, that was going to be my next question, because how can these security guarantees, if enacted, be trusted when even the rest of Europe, us in Poland, the NATO alliance, is itself doubting that Washington might not come and support the continent in the event of a Russia attack?
President Trump did something really good during the NATO conference several months ago, and he actually confirmed Article 5 and stated basically that the United States is supporting Article 5. I don't believe, that President Trump is going to throw Europe under the bus if Russia attacks Article 5 for real. But here is a caveat. The problem is that Putin is not going to roll on tanks and jets to any of those countries. All he has to do is to continue with his hybrid war and sabotage activities, and to make sure that the West does not respond. And that's precisely why it's urgent for NATO to reconsider its hybrid warfare strategy and to reconsider Article 5, actually what it means. And also here in Washington, D.C., we have to understand that we are also going to be affected by that, and that our national security strategy also has to count for a new generation of warfare, the one that Russia and China are happily waging against the West.
Lastly, I want to ask about the viability of a peace plan that's accepted by both Ukraine and Russia. I mean, do you see a world where President Zelensky signs off on a peace plan and Vladimir Putin signs off on that same plan?
I can really not tell you with certainty what is going to happen, but if history is any indication, Putin is more than happy to sign whatever he wants. The problem is whether he is going to follow through on such a thing. We already saw like a Budapest memorandum. We already saw multiple peace agreements in the past, and we already know that the Kremlin violated, because what Putin needs to do right now is to buy more time to replenish his military and reposition. Words are cheap. Actions speak louder than words. And that's precisely why the West right now needs to make sure that Ukraine is armed with everything that Ukraine needs to put Russia on the defensive in case Russia again attacks. That's the only language that Putin will understand. Papers and empty agreements and words will not make the deal.
Ivana Stradner, Research Fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Thank you, as always, for your time.
Thank you.
And that's all for World News tonight. Do stay with us here on TVP World for more. I'm Aaron Darman. Good night.